Welcome to Hope in the Halls, Christian Voices from Washington, D.C., sponsored by Hope to the Hill, also sponsored by Can We Pray, with your hosts Nathan and Amber Kistler. Learn more about Hope to the Hill at www.hopetothehill.com.
Welcome back, everybody.
Hi, everyone.
I was going to let you start that, and I froze.
Yeah, you did.
And now we're going. But it's been, I think, about a month. We've been busy. You had Christmas tour.
Yeah, we had the Gaither Christmas tour, which you were with me on. And I mean, really, we had holiday season is just tough in general because there's so much going on. And then, of course, right after the tour, it's holiday time with family. And we went straight to North Carolina to visit your family.
Yeah.
And then back to Georgia to be with my family. Mm-hmm. And then we went to Florida for a short time just to kind of have a break from just the holidays and everything. And then, then we got back into the swing of things. And I was in the studio recording the first 2 weeks of January and on the road. And then I finally came home. And then now you're home from D.C. So we have a lot to catch up on of everything that's happened since that time frame.
Yeah, for sure. And, we went out of session, I think it was the 14th of December, 13th or so, something like that. Whatever that Thursday was. I think it was actually the 12th. But we went out of session for the holidays, and looming over Washington was a big budget bill, to fund the government, which just yesterday was passed. And so that kind of overtook the city when we first came back in January. And it's really been an interesting couple of weeks. So we'll recap. Amber obviously gave just on the personal side of us, but DC-wise, we had the screening of The Chosen Christmas special, the very end of November, going into December. We just alluded to it in the last episode with Congressman Greg Steube, because really, Greg was the one that initiated doing any of those screenings for The Chosen. We had been giving out DVDs to every, or DVD copy of The Chosen to every office for the last 4 years. But Greg reached out to me with another member, a Democrat from New York, Representative Tom Suozzi, who is not in Congress anymore, but super guy. We had an amazing time. So something stemmed from that we haven't really talked about up until now, because it wasn't public information yet. We were told that it could be out in March, May.
Well, we actually got to watch it over Thanksgiving break. We did. We were having Thanksgiving with your family. We actually celebrated Thanksgiving in Pigeon Forge this year. And while we were there, we got the link to watch this beforehand because
so when we did the screening in 2021, Jonathan, I remember the day very vividly when they called me and they said, "Hey, Jonathan's coming, but he's going to have some extra guests with him because there's a film crew following him around to..."
Which we thought was maybe just from The Chosen. We didn't really understand.
We had no idea.
And we didn't care. We were just like, okay, it's Jonathan Roumie. Of course cameras follow him.
Yeah. But they were following him everywhere he went for a whole year to just see what he was seeing,
they were
what
documenting.
He was experiencing. Yeah. And so we said, that's fine. They followed him. We ended up getting into some trouble, which I want to save that portion of the story for when Jonathan is on soon, because he is going to be on the podcast with us. But I don't want to take away from that story because I want to hear his perspective on that night more than just us talking about it. But anyways, they filmed a documentary. I did not really know, nor neither of us did, just how big of a documentary it was at that point. Well, the night we're walking through the Capitol, we were walking and talking. At that point, we had to send the cameras out of the building for reasons that we'll share later. And they said, "Hey, could you say that one more time, what you just said?" We were just walking and talking. And I said, "Sure, that's totally fine." So they pulled out their phone, had no idea that they were going to use it in this documentary till probably 6 months later.
Right.
The director reached out and he said, "Hey, y'all have a really pivotal role in this documentary." And I said, "Oh, okay." And they finally let us watch it. He said it's probably going to be out next year. Well, all of a sudden, I guess 2.5 weeks ago,
Yeah, I think so.
I get a message, or no, I see on Instagram late. It's like 1 a.m. Jonathan Rumi shares the trailer for the documentary, and Amazon bought it, and they dumped it. I mean, not dumped it, but they dropped the documentary without telling anybody. They surprised all of us. So Jonathan, shared that. I think that post alone had 155,000 likes on Instagram.
Yeah, and the documentary, by the way, is called Jonathan and Jesus. So if you haven't watched it,
On Prime.
oh my goodness, let me just tell you, we already love Jonathan. He's one of our dearest friends. We absolutely love his spirit that he carries with him and his love for other people. But when you watch this documentary, you really see that side of Jonathan and the struggle of playing the role of Jesus for him.
Yeah.
I mean, really, when you think about it, I can't imagine trying to play the role of Jesus because Jesus was perfect. He had no flaws. He never sinned.
Yeah.
And so trying to play that role has to be a heavy burden, a heavy weight upon his shoulders because
No doubt.
there's so much required of you and responsibility.
Yeah.
And I truly believe Jonathan was called to do this. I have no doubt in my mind that this
Especially
was meant
after
for him to play
the
this role.
documentary too. You really see that quite clearly.
Yeah,
His childhood.
and they talk about it, and I can relate with this because I told you this when I first met him.
Mm-hmm.
They talk about how people, when they meet Jonathan in real life, it's hard for them to disassociate that it's not Jesus in a way because he plays the role so well. Obviously, none of us have ever seen Jesus face to face. We are going to have that one day. But right now, I always say we have Jonathan, right, to go off of because I feel like he has had the best, I don't know, I think he has done the best portrayal of Christ. Just the humility of him and also just the humanity of him. Yeah. And the fact that he has a sense of humor and he's laughing with the disciples. And a lot of times when people play that role, it's a very serious role because there's so much things that happened when Jesus walked the earth and it was all serious. But I do believe that he had a sense of humor. I mean, he created us, so he had to. But Jonathan does that so well, and we obviously don't know what that's like yet. But if I had to guess, I feel like it would be something like that. And so it's hard when Jonathan walks into a room to not go, "Oh, this is Jesus." And you have to like separate the two. But watching the documentary, there's a lot of people, they hug him and they want him to pray for them because they feel connected through him to Jesus. And it's an amazing thing to watch.
Well, yes. And to clarify too, based off of that, I think a lot of people get very, I don't want to say weird about it because it's not weird, but people get very concerned with that. And there's been a lot of people over the last few years that don't like The Chosen for that reason. So obviously we understand that, and I think most people understand that Jonathan is in fact and has never claimed, in fact, the opposite.
He doesn't want that.
Yeah, he doesn't at all.
He doesn't want that at all. But it can't help but follow him with the role.
And so I think, what we both took away from, you can obviously clarify more after I say this, but I think we both took away from the documentary that Jonathan takes it so seriously, the responsibility of what he's doing, what God, I believe, has brought into his path, and is very, very careful. And you hear him say that when people say, "Oh, Jesus," he goes, no, I just portray him in a show.
Exactly.
And so he's very careful, because I never want people to get the wrong idea, because so many people do. Jonathan is in the humility, and he's just a dude. He's just a man, but he is a humble guy that we have a lot of respect for. And God's given him a great ability to act.
Absolutely.
But also just to love on people. And everybody that I've seen him around, or we've seen him around, he
takes time with them.
He does. And you remember you were talking to him, I think, the night we walked in to the room when we did the screening.
He couldn't believe that members of Congress... Well, first of all, he didn't know why they were lined up. And I thought he would just know because we brought him there.
Yeah.
And he said, why? First of all, he said, who is everybody in the room? And I said, well, these are staffers. I said, but the people that are lined up are actually members of Congress.
Yeah.
And they were all standing there and they're smiling at him and they're holding their phones. And Jonathan's, oblivious to what's going on. And he said, why are they lined up? And I said, they're here to get a picture with you. And he said, but I wanted to get my picture with them.
Yeah.
And so he's so humble about it. And I always, going back to his portrayal of Jesus and people not being able to separate the two, I liken it to this. When I first met Dennis Quaid, which was just a few short months ago, I first met him. I didn't look at him as Dennis Quaid. I looked at him as Nick Parker from The Parent Trap, because that's who I grew up with.
Right.
I watched The Parent Trap as a child, and it was like he was everybody's favorite movie dad.
Right.
Every one of us that grew up in that era, we all knew who Nick Parker was, and that's who we wanted as a movie dad. He was just like the perfect dad, you know.
His brother is Cousin Eddie.
Right.
Everybody knows Cousin Eddie.
So that's the thing, is like when I first met Dennis Quaid,
Right.
it wasn't like I was meeting him going, oh my gosh, it's Dennis Quaid. I'm going, this is Nick Parker. This is like the best dad that was ever in a film. That's how I looked at him. And it was hard for me to separate the two, that he's not really Nick Parker.
Yeah.
I mean, I obviously know that, but when you've watched somebody on a film or on the TV,
Yeah.
and you meet them in real life, you have to wake up to reality a little bit and go, oh, they're just human. But the more I got to know Dennis, I started loving him as Dennis Quaid.
Right.
Because the real Dennis Quaid is even better than Nick Parker, right? And so, and then when I met Jonathan, I started loving him as Jonathan. And I wouldn't say he's better than Jesus at all, but he is still a wonderful human being. And to know his humility in the role that he's playing has been an honor to sit back and watch. And that day that we took him in the room with all those members, it just showed me even more of how humble he was, because he, not for a second, thought they were standing in line to get a picture with him. It never dawned on him. He never thought that it was about him. And he didn't come there wanting it to be about him.
Yeah.
It was all about who he's portraying.
Yeah. And he thought the night was about those people.
He did.
And sticking around. And I'll never forget, I still sit back and smile some days, because back then, and maybe we've told this story, but it's a very short one, but back then, Democrats wore masks and Republicans didn't, to make a point. Everybody was making a point in 2021, during the end of COVID. And I remember we were about to get on an elevator with Jonathan, and it opened up, and it was full of masked politicians, all Democrat House members. And one of them in the back of the elevator, I still don't know who it was, because he had a mask on, so I couldn't tell who it was. But he said, Jesus. And Jonathan, again, he said, well, I just portray him. But yes, it's me. And, people everywhere. And it's become even greater, over the last couple of years. So back to the documentary, we had no clue in 2021, in November of 2021, that 2 years almost, I guess it is, a year and a half later, that this documentary would come out. And it's really been amazing. The director texted me the morning, later that morning after they released it, and he said, hey, I just wanted to make sure you knew. And he said, I'm so thrilled that all this has worked out. He said, but you guys have an integral part of this documentary. And he said, I'm thrilled for that. We love the work that you do. And it's been neat to see how many people have reached out through our website and just said, we had no idea the work that y'all do in DC, but we're grateful. And so God has given us a lot of, if you want to call it free press, that we've gotten through this documentary. But it's just, it's a reminder of why and how important these screenings that we've been doing on the Hill are. That leading to just this last week, we had, just 2 days ago, we had a screening of a film called Ordinary Angels. And it was fantastic. And the real life pastor, who we had a connection with too, that we did not realize, no clue. Pastor Dave Stone from Southeastern Christian Church in Louisville, Kentucky.
He pastored one of the most beautiful churches
I've never seen anything like
you have ever seen in your life. I mean, we're talking. This looks like something that is in Broadway, it's a
25,000 member church in Louisville.
But the way it's laid out is gorgeous. I mean, it's when you're standing. We sang there on the Gaither tour. That was our connection to him.
Yeah,
and he's close friends with the Gaithers in West Hampton, and we sang there in 22 of the Gaither Christmas tour. And I remember walking on the stage for sound check and looking up, and it's just rows and rows and layers and layers and levels of just chairs. And I mean, it was just. Those hotels, it reminded me of those hotels that you stay in that are in a circle.
Yeah.
And you just see the rows of the floors. That's kind of what that church looks like. It's just huge.
Yeah, look it up. Southeastern Christian Church in Louisville. If you ever,
But it's beautiful.
It's unreal.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And he has retired from that church now, but he still preaches there 6 weeks out of the year.
Kyle
but-
Eidelman is the pastor, which
He was on the Gaither
Gloria
Cruise.
Had him come speak. He's a super guy, and just so we've had such a great opportunity to do these screenings over the last 7 years now.
Yeah.
Could
Which,
you
by
the
the way,
years?
if you haven't seen Ordinary Angels,
Great,
go see it.
Yeah, February 23rd.
Yes,
comes
go
out.
see it. It's a true story.
Wow.
Amazing film.
We watched it at home, but we were cleaning. I remember the night. This was a while ago. It was probably 6 months ago when we watched it, and I got to admit we weren't probably paying attention completely because we had a lot going on. But to sit the other night and watch it straight through, I bawled like a baby. I mean, it's an incredible film. Really, you need to go see it. Take your church to see it. It's a great family film, but it also it shares the gospel, and it also talks about how organ donation and one lady changed the lives of one family.
Right.
I mean, just a very she owned a hair salon in Louisville,
She
Kentucky.
was just a normal person.
And so that's why she
God
was
used.
their angel. And she's still alive. Pastor
She's
Dave.
an ordinary angel.
That's
There you
right.
go.
Yeah. Pastor Dave is portrayed. Their church, I don't want to give it away, but their church plays a big part.
They play a pivotal role.
Before the new building was built. This was 30 years ago. We showed the film to Congress 30 years later on the day of the event that it happened. So it was pretty neat. But we had a great time. And, it's a great opportunity for us to get involved more in the lives of members of Congress. Diana Harshberger came. We'll have her on
Love
the podcast.
her.
She is hilarious, a spitfire. Amber and I have really enjoyed getting to know her. And she's from Tennessee, Middle Tennessee area, I guess. Or actually, no, I guess it's Western Tennessee, maybe. No, is it Southern?
She's from, her district is like Pigeon Forge, Gatlinburg area.
So it's not west. It's
No.
the other side.
Yeah.
But just a godly lady, and she is very spunky and just has no problem speaking the truth. And I love that about her. So I'm looking forward. We'll get her on at some point soon.
Oh, yeah. She's a spitfire. I love her.
But
We need more women like her in Congress.
This is how much fun we had. So the other night we're in the Capitol. Congressman Jim Jordan, who's a super guy, he's giving...
And he's always busy.
Yeah, he's intense.
I mean, obviously it's Jim Jordan. He's always headed to the next appointment because he literally is needed in so many different areas.
He's chairman of the biggest committee in Congress, Judiciary. So he and his wife are doing a Fox News interview right outside of the rotunda in Stat Hall. And he's just going at it. And so we get over there and she goes, "Oh, we gotta wait for Jim to finish his interview." And she's just kind of laughing with the guys off to the side, and we're trying not to laugh because she's so funny. So he finishes and she walks by and he goes, "Oh, hi Diana, how are you?" And she goes, "Jim, I tell you what, you should have been at the screening tonight." And he said, "Well, I had some important things with Hunter Biden going on." She goes, "Hunter could wait for a while. You should have been there." And so he said, "Yes, ma'am." She's just a cool lady. But we've really had just a wonderful opportunity this last year. And looking into 2024, this is actually our first episode of 24.
Yeah, it is. And it's an election year.
Oh, my goodness.
So we got a lot coming.
That's something. Big thing last week, had the Iowa caucus.
Iowa caucus.
Wow.
What a big deal that was. I mean, Trump obviously the winner of the Iowa caucus.
Yeah, he definitely was. And, we...
Do you think, just from your opinion, do you think that the other candidates thought that he was going to be the winner? Or do you think that they genuinely thought
I think
they had a
all know
chance?
that. I think at this point, for the last 3 or 4 months, they've all been fighting, hoping that they're going to be a VP.
I mean, it's crazy to me that the guy hasn't shown up for one debate and still is, the front runner. I mean, obviously he has a huge following. Mm-hmm. And I think that's pretty evident now.
Yeah.
And so, Vivek, Ramaswamy, he just dropped out and he endorsed Trump.
Yeah.
I know that Haley and DeSantis are still trying to run and see what they do. I think they're going, is it New Hampshire next?
Yeah.
Is the next one they're working
it's a big
on?
One. That'll be a big one there.
Yeah. But we've all, now, are we going to talk about what we had predicted would happen that is starting to slowly come out in the news?
You mean Michelle Obama?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say for the last almost 4 years, And I was really shocked that in 2020 this did not happen, that she did not run, because there were rumors around DC back then that there was a possibility of that. And the further we've gone over the last couple of years, I've certainly, you and I have talked about this a lot in private. We've told people I really feel quite strongly that she's going to end up running in some capacity. And I'm not the type to get into.
Well, we were talking about who we thought could possibly beat President Trump, and who the Democrats could possibly put forward that would be that person, and that was our guess. We both agreed that Michelle Obama would be
a tough fight, a
tough one for him to beat.
Yeah. So that's something that's going to be interesting, and you're starting to see news articles now that are releasing.
Well, they don't talk about it, but she's been campaigning in places. She's been visiting cities, and you can look it up.
Yeah.
Like, she's been going on different little. She hasn't called it campaigning,
right?
But she's been going to different places and speaking, and and so now they're starting to finally put it out there. It baffles me that it's taken this long, but there's obviously a reason for it why they haven't. So everything is very strategic in Washington.
Totally. And I think, you remember we watched Sarah Palin back in the day when she ran in the VP spot with John McCain. We were teenagers, I think, when that happened, but...
Funny story about Sarah Palin, though.
Go ahead.
I have a good story about her.
All right, go ahead.
So she came to the National Quartet Convention.
That's right, I forgot about that.
And she spoke there.
Yeah.
And we went up, took a picture with her, and we gave her a gift, which was a few of our CDs and DVDs. And we just told her that we loved her and thought she was a great person. And it was so nice to meet her. And she got on the platform to speak. And she said, "I'm so happy to be here. And it's so nice to be with all of you, my friends, and to get to see the Nellens." And I will never forget it. Everybody looked at us and was just like, "Oh my gosh, she mentioned your name." Like,
kind of.
And I'm like, "Yeah, but she got it wrong." But you kind of don't care. It's
she
funny.
Was a sweet lady.
Yeah.
But I remember back then the struggle, of that whole campaign season. And even after that, she had her reality TV show. And I think in politics, there's the possibility of being too available to the American public, where they get to know you so well that they don't maybe want to vote for you anymore. I think that was kind of what happened with her, because she never really had that opportunity again. Obviously, she became a household name.
And her family went through a lot.
Yes, but she became a household name for all the wrong reasons. Unfortunately for her, and again, a sweet lady, and she and her husband, we met both of them at an event, probably, I don't know, it was a year or two after that.
And I think her spotlight, it hurt her family in some ways when they would have a fall, or they would mess up. The spotlight was also on them, and I think she felt the responsibility as a mother to step back out of the limelight and say, "My family is more important."
Yeah.
And that's what she did. And obviously she's gone through some hard trials. Her family has gone through a lot. And so she hasn't really been, in the political world for quite some time now.
Yeah. And I think, so that's a negative version of, what can happen. I think President Reagan would be one of the greatest examples of how somebody took a loss because he had lost, the previous election cycle. So what does he do? Obviously, he's a household name at that point, but he uses to his advantage a radio show, just enough to keep himself out there talking about the issues for 3 years or so. He runs again. He wins. So there's always an important thing. So all of that to say, Michelle Obama, if you have watched her over the last 3, 4, 5 years, she's not out there so much where it's overindulging into her life. But she's out there enough to remind people that she's still around. And to me, when I see people doing that, being around this world, and that, as long as we have, that, I don't want to say it frightens me, that makes my ears perk up a bit and go, okay, what's coming here? What you
it makes you pay attention.
Yeah, you have political aspirations. And anybody who runs, and you could watch a lot of shows about people who run for president, and both parties, I would say Melania Trump was one of the few first ladies we've ever had who really seemed like she didn't want that limelight in her life. She didn't really want to be in that role per se. I don't want to speak for her, but it certainly seemed that way. Every other president and first lady we've ever had, both parties wanted to be out there. They were doing that together because they both wanted to be in political power. And so everybody has, look, Bill Clinton became president. Hillary Clinton wanted to be president. So we've seen this stuff happen. I don't think it's a far stretch to say that Michelle Obama may want to do that as well. So that's something to watch for sure. I think
which would be interesting
very, very
because
interesting.
We almost had that with Hillary, where a former president would then become the second. What do you call him? I mean, like, what is Kamala's husband called?
He's the second man.
A second man?
It's a second gentleman. Actually.
Second gentleman? Okay. So he would be the first gentleman then, even though he was the former president. That almost happened with Hillary, but I don't know, guys. If Michelle runs,
it will be interesting to see.
That's going to be an interesting race to watch, just because that's a tough one.
It is.
The Obamas are loved. They are very well loved and respected. And
you look at when Obama ran the first time, and the first African American president of the United States. What Michelle, obviously, the other two things that she has going for her is that she's
a woman,
also, and she's also African American.
Right.
So you're talking about two glass ceilings that are being broken there, and that I think a lot of women, that normally may vote a different way, would be excited about that. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm very, very alert, and we both have been, to watch what is going on. But certainly something to pray about.
I think a lot of women who might be more on the Republican side, who don't like Trump for his, what they believe they're his remarks about women or whatever you might want to think about it. I think they would turn for maybe like a Michelle Obama. I think those people are on the fence when it comes to that, because those women are kind of like, I don't know if I really want Biden, don't really want Trump. But if you put a woman out there, regardless of where they land on beliefs, I think they vote for her.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point, and obviously...
But then that brings up the point of who Trump would pick for his VP, right? We have said now, with where we believe, we truly, you and I both believe he will be the nominee. There's no doubt in my mind.
I think if anybody tries to deny that at this point, it's just not possible.
You're just not paying attention at all. But I think... we both think that he would have to choose a woman, right, at this point. And I think he will.
Yeah.
I think he will. But we were listening today, and somebody said that they think it could be Nikki Haley. I just don't see him picking Nikki Haley.
Well, the word that's going around D.C. This week that I've heard is Elise Stefanik, who is in party leadership. She's a nice lady. She's very sweet. You remember at the Sound of Freedom screening, McCarthy brought her back to meet Jim Caviezel, and she had a staff, one of her security foreign detail agents that loved Jim. She brought her with her back, and I mean, she's a really nice. I like Elise Stefanik.
But we think.
I mean, I don't know. I've not heard anybody. I mean, obviously some people have said, "Oh, that would be really cool," but I've not heard anybody in the Beltway say anything about this. But I think Candace Owens would be a very interesting.
Exactly, which is what you would have to do if somebody like a Michelle Obama runs. You would have to have a Candace Owens. I don't see you winning with a Nikki Haley. I think you have to have a Candace Owens. And let me tell you, Candace Owens is one of the most brilliant people I have ever listened to in my life. Just to hear her talk. We actually just watched her whole documentary about How to Make a Murderer. If y'all haven't seen that, you need to go watch it. If you saw that documentary on Netflix, which most of us who were just, in our houses during the pandemic, we watched that. And it's very interesting because I have to admit that whole documentary had me hooked in thinking that maybe he was innocent. And the way that they portrayed him on that documentary was just like, he got so wronged by the police. And then Candace Owens comes out with this documentary and totally demolishes all my beliefs.
Yeah.
Because of all her investigative work and the evidence that she brought. And she said, actually, they didn't show this part of the trial. They didn't tell the whole story. He's not innocent at all. So, I mean, the way that she is able to investigate and bring forth the truth in front of the public when people are not willing to bring forth truth right now, I think, number one, she'd be a great vice president. I do. I think she'd be great at it.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think it'll be interesting to see how that plays out for sure. And obviously, we're just surmising here, so it's not.
No,
you know,
it's not like we're in Trump's ear telling him who to pick.
Who knows what will happen with all of that? But I certainly think it'll be an interesting few months here. I last night when I got back, I had 2 or 3 conversations with a current member, and then 2 with current members and 1 with a member that's running again. And so, this is a heavy season for, all of the primaries. There's members of Congress that are leaving Congress right now that have been in for years that they're
we
trying to
just
find.
lost Kevin McCarthy.
Yeah, we've lost Kevin McCarthy. We're losing Drew Ferguson, who is our member here in Georgia. We're also losing Patrick
Who is
McHenry.
taking his place?
We don't know yet. I mean, there's 2 guys that are up, running kind of popular guys in this community right now. And so I reached out to both of them. I'd love to connect with them, generally, and ended up also talking to a dear friend who's running for a seat in North Carolina again, and
he's supposedly unopposed, right?
Well, so in the primary he's opposed by another Republican, which
right.
He's 6 or 7 points up, I think, right now in that primary. But as far as the actual, general election, there's no Democrat that has filed. So if he wins the primary, he'll have that seat.
And we want him back.
Yes. This congressman is a dear friend of the ministry and very, very grateful for him. But, it's just very, very exciting, the stuff that's going on right now. It is election season's an exciting time just because there's so much happening everywhere you go.
I mean, the Iowa caucus, we don't ever turn on the news, but I watched it just to see the numbers that came in. And why don't you explain why that is the Iowa caucus is such a big deal? Because there's a lot of people that asked me that night that were messaging me, and they were asking me questions like, so why is it always Iowa, and why do we start with Iowa? And so I want you to kind of explain that to everybody, because I'm sure a lot of people just go with it now. They're just like, oh, we just go to Iowa. So why is that such a big deal?
Well, obviously, every state picks their day. Super
Right.
Tuesday, March 5th is the big day where the majority of the states have their primaries. Iowa has been the first, at least as long as long time, longer than I've been alive. And so it is a great telltale sign. Iowans historically have, for multiple reasons. So you have the Iowa straw poll is probably what you're referring to first.
Yeah.
So the straw poll in Iowa typically, historically, has shown who would end up being president. And so now we're in the caucus season where it really matters. The straw poll is more like a practice run here. And now in the caucus time frame, this is where things are decided, where you have to have 1,215 delegates to win the nomination. Trump won 37, I think, in Iowa. And so each primary that goes on over the coming weeks and months will give him or the other candidates delegates. And when they reach that mark, just like when you are in the general election, you have to have so many, when you get to that magic number, that you have won. And so
Right.
This is what's kind of happening right now. But Iowa historically, especially in the straw poll season, that is how people kind of base, at least pollsters and so forth, base who they think is going to win from the Republican side, of course, when
Right.
we're talking about caucusing here. But it is a really interesting, all the details, the nitty-gritty details that go on, I've always enjoyed, from that, the historical perspective. I mean, this has been going on for years and years of time in this country, and so it always gets really fun. But we're very excited. It's going to be a great year, and we have some really great guests. We're finally getting them on the podcast with everything that's been going on. It was really hard, so we do have Jonathan upcoming still, Jim Caviezel coming, and we've been trying to get people on the schedule. It's very hard to get people on the schedule. Danny Goki, and
and then Tim Ballard.
oh, Tim Ballard. You were mouthing to me, and I couldn't
Yeah, I was
tell
trying
what
to
were
lead you into
saying.
it, but you weren't understanding.
Tim Ballard.
Tim Ballard.
I talked to his wife, Catherine. She sent me a text this morning, and so we're trying to get all of that situated. So the scheduling is hard with our schedule and their schedules to kind of lock them up together. And we'll have more members of Congress. Once we get back, so we're out this next week. When we get back into D.C., in the coming weeks, we're going to have Congressman Loudermilk will be on with us. And he's one I'm very excited about because he's one of our closest friends
We
in
love
D.C.
Barry.
And so we'll have a good time. But we just wanted to kind of catch you guys up on what's been going on.
Yeah. And we have a praise report.
Yes, we do.
So this was something that most people did not know that happened over the holidays. And really, we didn't talk about it on social media a lot or at all, I don't think.
No.
Most of you know that we've been in the process of doing IVF. And our transfer was supposed to happen on December the 15th. 14th originally. And so you're supposed to do a check, basically. I don't know how to say that without getting into details.
No, it's okay.
But you're supposed to do like a checkup about 5 days before that transfer happens. And the 5 days before I went in for the check, we were all excited. We knew it was going to happen. We were ready. And then they called us after we got back home from that appointment and said, hey, we found 2 polyps. And we need you to have those removed. You're going to have surgery.
Right.
Well, of course, that was, number one, a huge punch to the gut for us because that meant that we were not going to be able to transfer. And that also meant we were going to have to start that process all over again. And so we were not very happy about that. But we knew that we needed to take the doctor's orders and follow the rules, obviously, to have a healthy pregnancy and a healthy transfer. And so we were going into the holiday season. Christmas was coming. I mean, we were about 2 weeks away from Christmas, which meant that the doctor's offices were closing down. So that was also another bummer because we were going to have to put it off for at least another 3 weeks. And so once Christmas went by, I called the hospital and said, hey, I've got these polyps. I need to get them removed. They got me on the schedule. We thought everything was going great. And I had an appointment with our IVF doctor who they were going to also take another check and look at the polyps again to see where we were at. And then about a week ago, I got a call from the hospital and they said, hey, we just looked at your chart and found out that you had blood clots back in September. And I said, yes, I did. I still have them and they're obviously still there. And I deal with them. I take shots, injections every day. And it helps me to control making new blood clots. It doesn't help the current blood clots, but it does help control your body continuing to make new ones. And so they said, well, we're going to have to cancel the surgery because of the blood clots. We don't know that we can put you under anesthesia. That could be very dangerous for your lungs and creating new blood clots. And we just don't feel very comfortable with that.
Right.
So after talking to them for several different times, they finally decided to ask my hematologist, who's the one who deals with my blood clots. I have so many doctors now. I mean, I'm only 34, about to be 35, and I have like 5 different doctors, and so it's hard to keep up even for me.
Yeah.
But they wanted me to talk to the hematologist and go over what the options could be. Called the hematologist, and she said, I don't see why that would be a problem for you to have surgery. However, if it will make them feel better and maybe we'll get some answers about the progress of the blood clots, let's do a CT scan. I said, okay, I'm fine with that. So on Tuesday, I went for a CT scan that was this week and walked in. It was very quick, very easy. I've had the CT scan back in September when we found out there were blood clots. And so I get done with the scan, and really I'm just basically thinking they've most likely shrunk a little bit. They're supposed to dissolve eventually. But we're about 5 months in since, I first found them. And we went to eat lunch and I got a call. It was 10 minutes. We had been out of the appointment maybe 10 minutes. Eating lunch, just got our drinks. And I get a call from the hospital and they were like, we don't know how to tell you this, but you don't have blood clots. They're not there. And I said, what? Amen. And they were like, there's no blood clots there. There's no... they call them pulmonary, what is the word I'm thinking
Embolisms.
of? Embolisms, yes. And I said, well, that's great news.
Yeah, praise the Lord.
And so then it was like, okay, I can have the surgery, right? Yeah. Like that was good news. I was just happy that I was going to be able to have surgery. That meant I was cleared. Yeah, we were going in the right direction. And so I call the hospital back, get them on the phone, and I said, hey, guess what? Great news. I don't have blood clots anymore. Of course, I'm still on the medicine. You're supposed to take that medicine, and obviously with IVF, I have to stay on it the entire time. But I had no blood clots, so anesthesia wouldn't be an issue now. So they were like, okay, we'll get you back on the schedule. We'll give you a call once we can figure that out. I said, okay, great. If you could get me back on that same day we had, that would be wonderful because that fits in the schedule with the IVF doctors.
Right.
So then Wednesday, I had an appointment with the IVF doctors, and that was to check on the polyps to see where we were at with those. And they wanted to do a full scan so that they could then send that over to the surgeon who would do the removal of the polyps.
Yeah.
And so we go in, we do the scan and do all that stuff. It was not very fun. Let me just tell you, if you've never had a SHG, women, it's not fun. Would not recommend. But it's a necessity. I did it, done a lot of stuff that I have not had fun doing with the IVF, but it's okay. It's worth it.
Yeah.
And came out of the office, and we got home, and I was waiting on a call from them. I didn't hear from them all day long. And then the next day, which was yesterday, I got a phone call. And I had prayed and just told the Lord whatever his will was.
And to preface before you say this, so Dr. Roller, who
George.
works with us, George, George was the best man in our wedding. George is a prayer warrior, and I think and Linda, both of them, they are. And they're the type of people, if you tell them something like that, a prayer request, they're going to pray for it right then.
Yeah, well, I called George.
Right.
When I found out that I did not have blood clots, George had been praying for that. And so I called George personally because you were on the plane. I couldn't call you. I texted you first.
Yeah.
And I called George because I was so excited. I said, George, you're never going to believe this. And he's like, what? What is it? And I said, George, I don't have blood clots. They're not there. And he said, wow, isn't that just like God? And so I told him about the appointment the next day, which was to check on the polyps. And so he prayed for me right there.
Yes.
He did. He prayed for me right then and there while I was driving.
Yeah.
And he prayed for specifically that the polyps would not even be there. That was George's prayer.
Yeah.
And so we get done with the prayer, and I'm like, thank you, George. I'll keep you updated and all this stuff.
And we don't really think about those things. You know what I mean? Like,
no, we don't. I mean, I'm very appreciative of it.
Right,
but at that point,
okay.
and this is what I told Melody, who stays with me a lot, like when you're gone and she helps me around the house and stuff. I told Melody that day, I said, God doesn't owe me anything, but I feel like he's already given me the greatest gift already by taking the blood clots away. So if he chooses not to do anything with the polyps, I'm just happy that I'm cleared for surgery at this point. I'm just thankful for that we're at that point. And so the next day comes, and I'm sitting getting my hair done. My friend Rachel does my hair. And I get this phone call, and I knew who it was. It was the IVF doctor. And
Drum roll.
Yeah. And they said, Mrs. Kistler, we don't know how to tell you this because we know we just saw them in December. And they sent me the scans to prove that they were there.
Yeah.
But she said, your polyps are not there anymore. You have no polyps. And we don't know what else to tell you, but you just need to cancel your surgery.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I was overwhelmed. I'm getting my hair done in the hair salon, and I'm bawling my eyes out. And Rachel is like, what is wrong? And I said, no, it's really good news. Like, God has just done so much in the matter of 36 hours. I don't know how to handle it all. And so
my plane was just landing, and you called to tell me, and
I'm
I
like,
got in the ground.
Every time he's on a plane.
Yeah.
But it was just, God has just done so many amazing miracles. And
not my plane. I'm on a plane with about 200 other people.
Yeah. We don't have no jets around here.
Let's just
But
clarify
if you'd
that.
like to donate one,
I was sitting with
we're
a bunch
still
of other
doing
folks.
Southwest.
Yeah,
But no, there were so many miracles that happened. And when they told me that, I immediately thought of George because he was the one who prayed specifically for that.
Yeah.
And it was a great week of great news. And so then the IVF doctors were like, you need to cancel your surgery and we need to start transfer immediately. And so what was really funny, though, was about 5 minutes after that phone call, the hospital called me and they were like, we've got you back on the same day. And I said, I hate to tell you guys, I mean, I love to tell you this, but at the same time, I feel like I've driven you guys crazy, but I need to cancel the surgery.
I have to do it now.
And so they were so concerned. This is the hospital now. They were so concerned with what I was telling them that they wanted proof of it.
Yeah.
And they were like, can you, Mrs. Kistler, can you give us the number to your IVF doctor? We just want to confirm that this is really, I'm like, I know you guys don't believe me, but I'm telling you.
not lying to
this
you.
is what God does. It baffles the medical people in the medical world. They don't understand it.
Yeah.
And unless you're a Christian, you really don't get it. But I told him, I said, listen, they're not there anymore.
There
They're
are
not there.
no ironies.
Because, I mean, you got to think from a hospital standpoint, they heard from me the day before. They're like, so your blood clots are just gone, right? And I'm like, yeah, they're gone. Like they're not there anymore. And they were like, but they were just there. We saw them. You know, I did a scan in December for the blood clots, and they saw them in December.
Yeah.
And they were like, so they're just gone? And I'm like, yeah. So they checked with the hematologist. Hematologist confirmed, yeah, she has no blood clots. She is clear. So they got that, first of all, and they're already baffled by no blood clots.
Yeah.
Day 2 rolls around.
Now you have no
and now I
polyps?
have to tell them the polyps are gone as well. And they are just like, how is this even? What are you doing? Are you making this up?
Yeah.
And so that's why I said call the IVF doctor. So they called her, and that office confirmed. They said, no, we checked her. She has no polyps. We can show you the scan before. We can show you the scan today.
Yeah.
She has no polyps. So that was a great news. And then today they called me and they were like, by the way, the medicine that you would normally take for transfer, you actually don't need. So I'm taking less medication this time around as I did in December. Mm-hmm. And so God has just done amazing things this week. And it's just been nice to have a little bit of sunshine during this process, because we've not had a lot of it in the past few months. And it was just it was a gift from God for him to just be like, I just want you to have a good week this week. And it was an amazing week.
And for those of you who listen to the podcast, we were supposed to be next week on a trip to DC, and we were really looking forward to that. And for a couple of reasons, one of which, most importantly, Amber's surgery next week, we had postponed that trip. And so I know now she doesn't have surgery, and there's no way. I do
still have a very important doctor's appointment next week, so that's not. We just changed the time frame of things that are happening.
Up until yesterday, Amber was having surgery, but we're praising God for that, and it's amazing what God's doing.
His timing is perfect. Yeah. You know, we didn't understand in December what was going on, and I'll be honest with y'all who are listening. The day that we found out that transfer wasn't going to happen was a very dark day for us. Yeah. It was a day of confusion and sadness, and I was really angry. Yeah. I mean, I shared that with Nathan that day. I said, I'm angry with God, and you told me I think he understands. But now, looking back, I still don't know why. Like, I can't tell you why he did what he did. All I can tell you is that, like, back then in December, I had blood clots and I had polyps. And I can tell you that as of January, I don't have blood clots and I don't have polyps. Yeah. And so I think God was just like, let me do what I need to do to get you prepared for where you're going. Mm-hmm. But sometimes that takes patience, which I'm not good at. Nathan, being married to me for almost 5 years now, knows that I am not good with patience. It is probably the biggest thing that I struggle with is patience. I am not a procrastinator. I want everything done right then. I want it done now. If I have an idea for our house, I'm like, let's go to Home Depot. Let's get it done today. And Nathan's like, we just talked about this. We were just dreaming. Like,
I just got home.
Yeah, and I'm like, no, we gotta do this now. If it's anything to do with getting something that we might want, let's go get it today. Why can't we order it today? And Nathan's like, no, we cannot get that today. So it's hard for me to have patience because I am such a have to have it now type person, whether that's, something that we're doing in our house or that we're buying, or even with IVF, obviously. And IVF has been a lot harder of a faith journey because wanting a baby is such a big want for us. And I felt like I've waited long enough. That's kind of where I got December, is that, Lord, we've waited long enough. How much longer do you plan on us waiting? But it's so much worth it. It's so worth it when you get to things like just a month later. Yeah. And God completely heals your body and says, this is why I'm doing this. If you would just wait, and you'll reap the rewards if you'll just trust me. And so I'm learning to have patience, and I'm learning to have more faith.
We both are.
But that's our good news for the week, and we're very thankful for it.
Yeah. And certainly grateful, for what God is doing. Prayer requests, for us, the things you can pray for, because so many people write and ask how they can be praying. We have screenings upcoming. We have outreaches. I've been under the weather the last month and a half. I have not felt well. And just pray that God would work in the physical issues that I've been having, and He has been. But just pray for that. Pray for Amber as we go through this transfer thing. But even beyond that, we have a bunch of stuff coming up in the next month and a half, 2 months, and There are so many of you who support our work, that support us, and we always are grateful if you take the time not only to pray for us, but to support the work that we're doing in DC by supporting the general fund for events. We have NRB coming up in about a month, just shy of a month, and we have to have a lot of things ready for that. It's a great opportunity for us to find partnerships with other organizations that work around the country to keep doing what we do in DC. And so that outreach is all of that. We would be so grateful if you would consider partnering with this ministry. You can go to hopetothehill.com and go to the giving page if you'd like to do that. And beyond that, just be praying for our country. We need to be begging God to provide what we need this coming election cycle. And it's an important time. And so we are very grateful you all spent the time with us today. I know it's nothing specific. The next one will be a bit more focused on a specific topic. But we wanted to kind of update you guys on what's been going on and some of the things that we've been talking about. Yeah, you're sitting in our living room.
And we had a wonderful date night this week for your birthday. Your birthday was January 9th.
34.
Yeah,
and, getting old. But I married an older woman, so you're just
not by much.
9 months older than me.
Not by much. I'm just wiser.
That's right. I've always given Amber a hard time since we were teenagers that she was a little bit older than me. But we're very grateful. That was the best time, honestly, and thank you, honey. It was the best night. And
it was a lot of fun.
It really was. The first of many. That is the word for the year. Amber, you called it this week, and I think it's so important. And what was that?
You go ahead.
Intentionality. In 2024. So whether that's with your spouse, with the things you do at church, the ministry that God places in front of you, whatever that is, be intentional in 2024 to serve the Lord in everything that you do.
Yeah.
Loving your spouse, your children, all those different things. Be very intentional this year. We are wanting to be extremely intentional this year in our marriage, in everything that we touch. That it would be for the glory of the Lord first and foremost.
Right.
And
when I prayed about the beginning of the year and what I always ask God for a word for the year, and that was the word that I felt like was just thrown in my face. And it was your birthday, and we were in Nashville recording, and you came to Nashville, but you were flying out to go to DC. Excuse me, and we didn't really get to celebrate.
Yeah.
And we kind of just glazed over it. It was like, and Nathan and I have been in ministry our whole lives, so we kind of get used to that. Like, birthdays are never really celebrated on the day. They're typically celebrated either earlier or later. And we're okay with that.
It's like a Pizza Hut or Taco Bell somewhere for lunch, whatever we can do. But yes.
In that time
it's
frame.
It's just the way that it is.
But I felt like God said, hey, I gave you this word, this goal for the year of 2024, and you're not really abiding by it if you're not spending intentional time together. So I came up with this whole plan of Nathan's birthday surprise day. It was just the two of us because
Two of us.
Nathan and I, we do so much with other people. We spend so much of our time with surrounding of other people, and we love that. We really do thrive in that setting. However, we're not very good at taking intentional time and setting that aside for ourselves. And if we do, we're like, we just want to sit at home and watch TV because we're exhausted. And but I felt like God was like, you've got to learn how to have date night. You got to set that time aside and just go out and have a good time. And so I planned this whole night. Nathan had no clue. I told him the day before, I said, I need you to be ready by 5:00 and get somewhat dressed up, not too dressed up, but just, nice shirt, nice pants, that kind of a thing. And I took him to this place called Putt Shack, which shout out to Putt Shack in Atlanta. That was so much fun. If you've never done that, it's like an interactive putt-putt course that has like all these little games as you're playing putt-putt. It's interactive with like Pac-Man and true or false questions. You got to hit the ball. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
If you've never done it, they're usually in major cities right now. I think they're probably in every major city. But Atlanta has one. I know Nashville has one.
It's like Top Golf for putt-putt.
Yeah, it's so much fun. So we went there first, and then we went to the Skyview in downtown Atlanta, which is the big Ferris wheel, also in like major cities. All of them have them. And then I took him to a place called the Sundial, which is at the very top of the Westin Hotel in downtown Atlanta. and it's on the 78th floor.
It was awesome.
So it is way up there. I mean, the elevator ride is just, you could go watch it on my Facebook page. It's on there, but it is just, it took like 3 minutes on the elevator just to get up to the restaurant. But probably the best steak we've ever had. And they had mashed potatoes and mac and cheese.
It was wonderful. We had a
It was
great
wonderful.
time.
And that's how we ended our night. And so it was a wonderful night, and it was intentional. We set our phones aside. We spent time together, and that's really what it's all about. And that's what we would challenge every single one of you to do. If you are married, take that time to just have date night. And date night doesn't always have to be expensive. It may just be going to your local Olive Garden and just putting your phones down and saying, you know what? The world doesn't need my attention right now. My spouse does, because that's important.
Yeah.
And you know what? We both found out that when we got done with date night, and we got home, the world was still turning without us. And in spite of us believing that sometimes it doesn't, it was still turning round when we got done with date night. And so that is our word for the year, is intentional. And we want to be intentional in our ministry, that we give our time to it when it needs our attention. And with our relationships, our friendships, our marriage, and our time with God.
Amen.
And so that's our focus for the year. That's our path, and that's our word. And I'm sure God has given you guys words for the year 2024. If you haven't asked him for one, you should. Ask him what he would have you do for the year to focus on this year.
Yeah, that's it. That's wonderful advice, and hopefully everyone will heed that, because I think it's great. But everybody, we are grateful. Appreciate y'all sticking with us. This is the longest, maybe one of the longest we've ever had.
Absolutely.
But it was good. I'm glad, and we can't wait to get back with you. Hopefully next week. We're trying to get back in the swing of things, of being consistent, and we're going to definitely be intentional about it. There you go.
That's right. And don't forget to subscribe on anywhere podcasts are available, whether that's Apple, Spotify, or Amazon.
Yeah. Or, I think Google even, too. Crazy.
Who knows?
But thanks, guys. We'll see you soon. Have a great week.
Bye.